What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinnahan, and I'm coming to you the day after Christmas after Washington's 30-23 loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Washington now falls to 4-12 on the season, and have lost now after starting the season 3-3. They have now lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of their last 11 games. 10 of the last 11 games after starting the season 3-2. My bad, 3-2. So not great, not great at all. But what can you do when you're on your third string quarterback, and pretty much a large majority of your defense is out with injuries? So let's jump right into it, though, with the first read. We'll start off with the young guys. I feel like this is kind of the big talking point coming out of this game on Christmas was the young guys. You look at, Johnny Newton, his 3-sack performance. You look at Bill Krosky-Merritt, the 72-yard run, couple of touchdowns for Bill in this one. Now, and then Ben Sinnott as well with 3 catches. So there's a lot of young guys that you really like to see perform well in this one. I mean, Mike Sanders still had a pass breakup. It was a game where you look at what Washington's season is overall, and you kind of just hope for, just some showing out of the younger guys, because the season is lost. All right, we all know this. Washington's been eliminated from the playoffs for about a few weeks now, and they're destined to have a top 7 pick at this rate, potentially even better by the time the games end on Sunday. I think Washington could potentially have a top 4 pick if things fall their way on Sunday. With the Cardinals, Jets, and Titans winning, I believe, Washington could have a top 4 pick after Sunday. So a lot of things on the line in terms of draft position. But for these guys on the roster, we've really wanted to see some development from the younger players, because you look back at the 2024 class and what Washington has gotten from that class beyond Jane Daniels, and it's not a ton, right? What, 5 picks of the top 100 for Washington? And you look at the guys, like Sinnott, Johnny Newton, Mike Sanders still, and Luke McCaffrey. We're not really getting a ton from those 4. Now, Sanders still has been probably the best out of those 4 easily, but he still had his ups and downs, and he's still developing. We've barely heard from Ben Sinnott throughout his first 2 years. We've barely gotten some notice of Luke McCaffrey until right before his injury, which that was very disappointing. And then you look at Johnny Newton, and Johnny Newton, even though this defensive line has just been hit hard with injuries, has struggled to get, starting caliber playing time. And then when he hasn't really delivered until today, or yesterday, really, as I'm recording this, yesterday, when he delivered with 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits. It was a dominant performance from number 95, and a performance that Washington fans kind of needed from Johnny Newton, because we're really starting to get concerned about his performance and about his play. Well, this is easily the best game of his career, and he did it against, offensive line that has kind of been hit with injuries as well, but still a very impressive performance going up against the interior for Dallas in this one. Now, Washington, of course, ultimately loses the game, but I think there's still a lot to like in terms of the younger players and how they performed on Christmas Day. All right, let's get to the offense and what worked, what didn't. We'll start. Josh Johnson was named the starter during the week. It was kind of obvious coming in. It was either going to be Josh Johnson, or it was going to be, maybe a Jeff Driscoll, who Washington signed to the practice squad and ultimately elevated for this game as a backup. So it was going to be one of those 2 guys. I really felt like Hartman kind of fell out of being one of the favorites in that QB3 role, which I don't blame them. I know there was a lot of talk going in about, hey, why are you starting Josh Johnson when you have a young Sam Hartman that could use these reps, and you can maybe see what you got from him as a backup? I think they already have seen what they've got. How many times have we complained about Sam Hartman playing in preseason games and how disappointed we were, especially this last preseason, in Hartman's performance? I think they've seen what they need to see out of Sam Hartman, and he's good friends with Jaden, and that's probably a good chance why he's still on this roster right now. But I'm cool seeing other guys. I don't think it's really that big of a deal that Sam Hartman didn't get the start here over Josh Johnson. I think we've kind of seen what Hartman is, and I know we know what Josh Johnson is, so that's not going to change. This game's not going to change our opinions on him either. But I don't think it was that big of a deal one way or the other. But Johnson, in his start, goes 15 of 23, 198 yards, takes a sack, no touchdowns, no picks. I thought Johnson played okay, like better than maybe what I was expecting from Josh Johnson. And yeah, I didn't throw for 200 yards. He didn't. He was 15 of 23, but I really felt like he had a solid performance given the circumstances. He kept the ball clean, no turnovers, which was huge, and ultimately, they had a shot at it. Now they were gifted of great field position early on with the well, no, that was last week. Oh my goodness. They marched down the field and had a chance to score, and a couple of times or really 3 times they were stopped because of field goals. But ultimately Washington's offense had a good amount of success. I felt like the screen game with Cliff Kingsbury was very creative. Like once more, I felt like we really missed that throughout the majority of this season. But with Debo today, some of these tunnel screens, some of these bubble screens, kind of the combination of both of them confused, the Dallas secondary a lot, and Dallas linebackers. They put a lot of pressure on them as well to make plays from tough angles, and they couldn't make tackles, which has been a struggle for them throughout this entire season. So I thought Cliff did a great job of exposing Dallas's weaknesses on their defense with those screen designs. And you look at the big one from Debo to give him good field position early on. Again, Washington ended up scoring a field goal on that drive, but that was a huge screen play for with Debo, and in the truck, the hit stick at the end that Debo delivered as well. That was awesome. That was awesome. What you love to see from him. Debo with a couple of catches. I believe both of them were on screens as well. For 2 catches, 68 yards for him. I thought Terry got involved a good amount. I mean, 7 targets with a quarterback that he doesn't really have a lot of chemistry with. Now, he has gotten catches from him before back in 2020, or 2019 maybe, 2019. But for McLaurin, I thought he had a really solid performance given the circumstances. Again, 5 catches, 63 yards. The passing game overall, I felt like was solid. Now, again, it's not what it is when Jaden's here or even when Mariota's here either, but it was doable, and it got him within 1 possession. Really, at the end of the day, it got him within 1 possession. Now, for the rushing attack, this is where things really, I felt like, excelled for Washington's offense, was with the run game. Bill Krosky merited 11 carries, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns, a long of 72. Now, if you take out that 72-yarder, it is 10 carries for 23 yards, which is not great. But that one explosive run was great. Debo on a couple of those, handoffs and all of that, 2 carries for 25 yards. Even Josh Johnson got involved a little bit, rushing as well. I felt like he scrambled and got out of the pocket and tried to make plays at some points, which really impressed me. Now, again, you can't really be asking a lot for 14, but I thought that he played really solid and ultimately, got him within 1 possession, which is about the best you can get right now with how bad this Washington team has played over the last few weeks and over the course of the season when most of the games were not even in it. Now, last few weeks, they've been in it, but ultimately have fallen short, but at least they've competed better than they have, and between the months of October into November and that stretch, which was really brutal, really brutal. All right, let's go on to the defense now with Washington. Defensively, again, I talked about him earlier, but Johnny Newton was the real star. 3 sacks for him, 2 tackles for loss. I believe he had 5 or 6 QB hits as well. He was getting into the backfield against Dak Prescott, and props to Washington's secondary for, I believe Johnny Newton shouted them out as well in his post-game press conference. Props to Washington's secondary for, being able to give time for Johnny Newton to make these plays in the backfield. Now, some of them were just quick sacks, which are great, but other ones, he fought around and Prescott couldn't find anyone, and ultimately Johnny Newton came down with the sack. So a couple of those, props to the secondary for their coverage. I thought they did a really fine job against CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Pickens 4 catches for 78 yards, Lamb 5 catches for 46 yards, which when you look back at what that dude has been able to do to opposing secondaries so far this season, that is really solid. Lamb had 10 targets and only 5 catches. That is That is huge. And now ultimately they still pass for over 300 yards. They run for over 200. So over 500 yards of total offense. But it definitely was a positive for Washington's defense. I felt, even though Dallas still scored 30 points, the second half especially only 6 total points for Dallas's offense, and it really gave Washington's offense a chance to come back in this game. They scored those 10 third quarter points to get back into it and make it, I believe, it was a 4-point game heading into the fourth quarter, and or 7, maybe it was 7-point game heading into the fourth quarter. By one point, it was about 3 or 4 point game, and Washington really had a chance to, come back and sneak their way into a victory, but ultimately did not work out. The KUWTC Turpin catch, we all know who that one was on. It's been a tough year for Quan Martin. It really has. But yeah, he's not part of this future at all. Last year he showed some good things in terms of, his play on the back end for this defense. But this season, and he was even dealing with a foot injury, I believe, or some injury last year as well. And he was playing kind of decent this year, though. It's been really, really bad in coverage. And ultimately, he's a free agent after this season, and I don't think he'll be back based on this. And that's just going to be another hole for somebody for Washington to have to fill. And ultimately, they weren't able to develop their younger players back. I know this was a Ron Rivera pick, but at the same time, back at that time as well, they weren't able to develop young players. And this is kind of the cost of it. You're going to have a starting position that you're going to need to fill, and it's going to have to be someone who, is actually kind of good, because Washington right now, they've got a lot of holes on their defense. You look at some of the players that, could be key pieces for them moving forward: Kinlaw, Newton, Harris, Louisville, I guess, Sander still. But beyond those guys, McGee is kind of unproven in large quantities. But beyond those guys, it is really wide open in terms of this defense. I'm just looking at the guys who played this week. Bobby Wagner probably not going to be back next year. Jeremy Reeves, okay, but, I wouldn't really consider him a starter. Noah Igbenogany, same thing. Ricky Barber, he had a really solid game, by the way. Ricky Barber, UDFA, on Washington's practice squad this entire season. He had a sack. He had 5 tackles as well for a defensive tackle. I thought that young duo of Barber and Newton really shined. And if Washington can bring Ricky Barber back on the practice squad, that would be really solid, because I think they might have something there with him. Jalen Holmes, though, as I go down the list, no. Jacob Martin, I forgot Jacob Martin. He was someone that's been Washington's best pass rusher this season, I feel like, and best defensive end. So I definitely consider him on this roster next year. But Shy Tuttle, Vaughn Miller, no. Quan Martin, no. Preston Smith, no. Tyler Owens, again, the depth piece. Jonathan Jones, no. Sheldon Day, no. Percy Butler, no. He's already on the roster because he signed an extension, but not really. And then Drake Jackson, he hasn't really done much in his time here either. So there's just so many question marks on this defense, and I don't really exactly know where Washington's defense is set to go from here, because there's, once more, again, we talked about the amount of change that need to happen between 2024 and 2025. Once more, there's a lot of change that needs to happen between this season and next season, and the pressure is on with Adam Peters, because he wasn't able to deliver last offseason in terms of improved play on this defense. I know the injuries hit this defense a ton, but he wasn't able to deliver, and now, he's kind of in that same boat, kind of in the same problem again, finds himself in the same problem again, and I think it's worse this time around than it was last time, which is crazy to say. So that's kind of where this defense stands, even after a loss this week. But let's go down to the final thoughts. Look, I didn't really talk a ton about the game, but the game overall, it's kind of more than that at this point. Washington has 1 game left in the season against the Eagles next Sunday, I believe at 1 o'clock probably. And look, after this game, which was their last standalone game of the year, they had 8 standalone games. I saw the stat. They went 0-8 in those standalone games, and their point differential was -77 or something crazy like that. So not great for Washington. And if you missed Sunday 1 o'clock games, I can tell you right now, they're coming back next year. So they're coming back next year because this team this year really disappointed in prime time. And yeah, and when you're starting Josh Johnson by the end of the year, you know your season's wrapped. So the Commanders 4-12 after their Christmas Day loss to Dallas. They've lost 10 of their last 11 with their only win, a 29-21 victory over the Giants. They're going to Lincoln Financial Field next week to play the Eagles in their final game of the season. I mean, that's really it. There's really not much else to say. The next episode is going to be out in 2 Mondays from now, recapping that game and kind of looking at the season as a whole as well. But yeah, that'll wrap things up for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I've been your host, Mason Kinnahan. See you guys in the next one. Peace.